Hey, deserving listeners, a lot of you have been asking me to watch the new Netflix reality show called The Ultimatums. So let's watch. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Let's watch.
Ultimatum, I need to answer those questions. I'm not ready to propose to Alexis at this moment. But if I met the perfect person, I would be ready to be engaged tomorrow.
Psychology.
He says he's not ready to marry Alexis, his partner, but if he meets someone on the show that he feels like he's ready to marry, he is, according to him, ready to get engaged or be married right away. If I were his therapist, I would say, well, let's drill down on what you just said there. Because sometimes clients will come to me, a lot of times actually, with various different issues, one of which being this, which is, should I stay or should I go? Should I marry this person? Should I not? I don't know. I have some problems. What should I do? I have found over time that there are certain questions that facilitate exploration and will discern one's resolve or what one needs or what one wants. And there are various different angles of exploration, but one of them would be something like this. Would be something like, well, so the various questions that I ask people are, what percentage are you sure about this person? Because sometimes when someone verbalizes that, plus it's just good for me to know, but sometimes they verbalize that, they hear themselves answering that question and then they kind of know where they're at. Because a lot of times we just avoid the whole thing because there's so much pain involved either way. If we commit when we don't want to, there's pain. If we break up and we're unsure, there's uncertainty and pain, at least for the other person you're breaking up with. So a lot of people just bury their head in the sand and avoid the whole thing. And so therapy can really help with that, to create a safe place to explore with a person who knows their way around this sort of thing and also doesn't have a vested interest in either way. Often when you're talking with friends and family, they will have a vested interest either way, and you'll see that. Some other questions I would ask are, how do you feel about spending the rest of your life with this person the way they are today? Because that illuminates if there are major problems with the person that you just don't like. And because I find, not always, that when you're in love and you have that resolve to be with someone, the answer is pretty quickly yes. Like if you asked me that question about my wife, I would say yes, very quickly. There's no ambiguity there. Are there issues that we have with each other? Yeah, we've been together a long time, so that's just going to happen. But are all those issues completely tolerable? Do any of those issues in our relationship challenge my resolve to be with her? No, not at all, in the least. Other people, when I asked them that question, or relationships I was in the distant past, I wouldn't have answered that way. I would have said, no, I can't, and that illuminates another aspect of this, which is that if you're holding out for a possible future where they will change, and then you will say, now I finally arrived, that can be chasing a ghost to some extent. Now, can people change? Can you work on your relationship? Yes. So it's not always a slam dunk, but it's a good question. One of the questions you might have for some of these people is it that you don't want to marry that person, or is it that you don't want to get married? And what Hunter just said is, I'm willing to get married if I meet the right person, and I don't want to marry my current partner. So the logic there, if A equals B and B equals C, then basically you're saying your current partner isn't right for you. Let's rewind that.
Situation. I'm also going to discover if I am really connecting with someone. In order to give Alexis, an answer to the ultimatum, I need to answer those questions. I'm not ready to propose to Alexis at this moment. But if I met the perfect person, I would be ready to be engaged tomorrow.
And he also says something earlier, which is that maybe if I dated other people, this one last chance, I would realize, no, I do want to be with my current partner. And there's some wisdom to that as well. It's not often we're given that chance. Sometimes we are. We break up and we date, and then we're like both saying, oh no, I've realized whatever problems we had together are far more tolerable than the problems I was experiencing in the dating world, and so let's go for it. So he's essentially saying that. Now, what the hosts were saying is one of the best ways to know he said, fear of commitment. He said, I didn't show that clip, but I actually don't like that term. No one's afraid of commitment. we have fears of things that come with a commitment. It's sort of like no one's afraid of falling, you're afraid of hitting the ground, right? So, I mean, maybe you're afraid of falling too. Point is that often when we're describing someone as having a fear of commitment, we're talking about someone that is afraid of being hurt. If they commit and then they get hurt, that's what they're afraid of. Also, they might be afraid of shame and guilt of breaking up with someone. So they're not afraid of commitment, they're afraid of hurting someone else. So they're afraid of themselves getting hurt, or they're afraid of hurting other people. So I don't like the term fear of commitment. I think that implies that someone just has this barrier that is irrational to commitment. Often when you find someone who won't commit, there's this, oh, you have fear of commitment, instead of, well, maybe they're afraid of being hurt. Maybe they're afraid of hurting other people. Maybe they're not ready to commit. There are people who just aren't really made for commitment. They don't want to be in a committed relationship, perhaps their entire life. So those individuals might not be best characterized as having a fear of commitment. They just aren't oriented that way. It's just not what they want to do. Anyway, it's sort of be like if someone didn't have kids, you'd be like, oh, you're afraid of kids. It's like, no, I just, when I add up all the pros and cons, this is my life path. I mean, in the opposite, you wouldn't say as well. Like, if you had kids, you're like, oh, you have a fear of being kidless. It's like, no, it's just, anyway. So, but the other thing that the hosts were saying is the reason why we have a fear of commitment is because we're always wondering if someone out there is better for us. And I think that is kind of true. I mean, I wouldn't phrase it that way, but that is a calculation that a lot of, at least mainstream Americans, will make as they're dating. And when they meet someone that feels the most compatible, that feels good, and there's a lot of attraction, there's often this calculation of like, I don't think I'm ever going to meet someone that gets me going more than this person does, or understands me more than this person does, or shares the same values. So it's not always the case, though. Sometimes people act more on their heart and not necessarily on an evaluation of that. Anyway, let's watch the show.
Psychologists agree an ultimatum is not a good way to get somebody else to do what you want, but it is the best way to get you the answers you need on a timetable you can live with.
Psychologists agree that an ultimatum is not the best way to get what you want. I'd like to see the research on that. Plus, all psychologists agree. And how are we defining an ultimatum? That's a pretty dubious statement. I can't imagine that has any kind of scientific basis. Maybe a psychologist or two psychologists that the show talked to agreed with that statement. So 2 psychologists that we talked to agreed with the following statement. Let's drill down on that a little bit. Psychologists agree that giving an ultimatum is not a good way to get what you want. Huh? I think ultimatums get a bad rap because they have a negative connotation in our society. Some ultimatums are absolutely justified. If you are, for example, in an abusive relationship, you can say to someone, unless you get help and stop abusing me, we're over. That's an ultimatum, and that's healthy, right?
To be with me and knowing everything about me.
I think we got perspective.
So tonight is your last night together as a couple.
At the end of the week, you'll each choose a new partner.
You'll move in together for 3 weeks in a trial marriage.
Interesting. They'll move in with another partner for 3 weeks. Are they going to date every other person? That would be a long show. Or is it just one other person? Maybe it's just one other person. I guess we'll find out.
I had this feeling with anybody else.
I see me being with you for the rest of my life. And I think that's why it hurts, because I feel like I'm ready and you're not. I'm not going through another 3-year relationship to end in nothing. That is why I'm giving this ultimatum. I love you to death, but I just cannot wait any longer.
All right, so they're having a good conversation. She is confused and also hurt, but understanding of where he's at. She wants to get married. They're both pretty young. She's 23, and he just got out of the military a year ago, so I'm guessing he's around the same age. So it's fine that she wants to get married. It's fine that he isn't ready. They are saying that they're best friends. They're in love. They've been together for 2 years. And she's saying she wants to get married. And then earlier she said, how do you buy me? You bought me a car. How do you buy me a car and not want to marry me? And he's like, well, because I care about you. And, people will do this and I'm guessing we're going to see a lot of this, that there's a sort of logical argument that people will fall into. They'll say, like, we've been together for 7 years. Like, how come you don't want to marry me? And that question is based on a premise. And in logical arguments, you want to challenge the premise that people are basing their argument on. And it's a debatable premise that one would automatically want to get married if you buy someone a car. Like, you would never buy someone a car if you didn't intend on marrying them. That's a false premise. It's some sort of logical fallacy. It's one of them. I don't know which one it is, but that's normal that people do that because they're trying to make an argument. They're trying to make a case. It's like they're in a court of law and they're bringing up data points to convince the other person. And you don't want to do that, obviously. You're not trying to trap your partner in a logical trap such that they will say, you win the argument. Yes, I will ask you to marry me. What you want, I would assume, if you're a mainstream American, you want your partner to want to marry you. It can be sometimes hard to fathom that someone would be in love with you and want to spend all their time with you and not necessarily want to be with anyone else, and yet they don't want to marry you. You know, marriage for some people is a particular thing.
So you're saying that we shouldn't have sacrifices, though?
No, I'm
saying
what I'm trying to
relationships
say.
should.
You don't let me freaking talk. My name is Lauren, and my boyfriend Nathan is giving me an ultimatum.
Are you gonna let me freaking talk? So that's good. We use this as a jumping off point. If you're a little annoyed with your partner, there's a lot of different tones that you can take with your partner. That was a really great, assertive, but playful tone. She could have said, let me talk, or I'm going to shut down. Instead, she says, are you going to let me freaking talk?
Really felt needed to be a part of my life. I think that ultimately you should be with somebody who shares similar wants and needs in life as you. I don't think that anybody should have to sacrifice anything for another person, and Nathan definitely knows where I stand.
Generally speaking, I would recommend that if someone is 100% wanting kids and another person is 100% not wanting kids, then they really should consider ending the relationship, because that's a hard one to live with. If, for example, you have kids when you don't want to have kids, or you never get to have kids when you always wanted kids, that's a big deal, right? Some people will change their mind. I hope that when you saw Lauren say that she didn't want to have kids, and then she quickly said, I've always been a little awkward around kids, I hope you didn't think, well, you just have to warm up around kids. That's what a lot of people will say. You just need more experience with kids. If you had that thought, that is an oppressive thought to people who don't want to have kids. People who don't want to have kids and who don't have kids, particularly women, will attest to the constant statements that are like that. They'll be, particularly if you're in your 20s. I think once you get to 45 or something and you say you don't want kids, people, they don't necessarily say much. They still might, but when you're in your 20s, there's this notion, well, you're young and stupid and naive, and of course eventually you'll come around because you're a woman, and you just haven't warmed up to the idea of having kids. Plenty of people don't want to have kids. Now, maybe they'll change their mind. That's fine. But when people say they want to have kids, like when Nate says, I want to have kids, I'm guessing you didn't think, well, he'll change his mind eventually, because he's young and stupid, and eventually he'll come around and he won't want to have kids. It doesn't go in the opposite direction. Some people will literally think of it as a threat, which is weird, right? When someone like her says, I don't want to have kids, there are people who literally feel like it's an attack and will go on the attack to try to change her mind, or will judge her, or will pigeonhole her as a cold-hearted B-word or something, or she must be an atheist. You'll get very weird reactions. It's like, the world is coming apart. A young woman doesn't want to have kids. It's just like, it's not a big deal. There's plenty of people to be born on the planet. We don't need everyone to have children.
It's really hard to go from what we had today to
But I can't see a future. I didn't get that internal feeling.
People use different guidance systems when they're initially dating. Some people are looking for that indescribable inner feeling, the spark, the chemistry, the drive, the attraction. Some people don't. And some relationships are great and that initially didn't have that kind of spark in the beginning. Some relationships are pursued without the spark, and then 9 months later you're thinking, oh, I never should have even started this relationship. So it's just hard. There's no rule about that. There's no science around that. It's what makes dating so glorious and so frustrating that you just got to muddle your way through it.
Thought our date went well. Clearly, it was all lip service. Bullshit. And you just nexted me as if that was even an option.
Wait, what? So, okay, she's hurt, clearly, and she converts it into anger and then weird judgment. She's saying, clearly our date together was lip service and BS. And, okay, so, I don't know if we saw particular BS, but even if he changed his mind, that's going to happen, right? And it hurts, so maybe she has a hard time sitting with that pain. It's hurtful. I wouldn't consider it to be like a massive loss. You have no idea who this person is, and so maybe you dodged a bullet. But anyway, and then she said something interesting at the end there. I want to rewind that.
I didn't get the internal feeling.
Thought our date went well. Clearly, it was all lip service. Bullshit. And you just nexted me as if that was even an option.
You just nexted me as if that's even an option. I don't understand what she's saying. It sounds like she's saying, you do not have the option of rejecting me? Is that what she's saying?
So, how you feeling about today after everything?
And I suppose if you're Colby, you might say, I think I made the right choice. Because there's a lot of different reactions to that that would indicate someone's character or defenses. If Alexis had said, oh, well, bummer. Did I make you feel uncomfortable? I'm sorry. Well, so you're sure you don't feel it? You don't want to give it a try? Come on. Me? No? Okay. Well, all right. It hurts. There's various different ways of reacting. The way she reacted, I think, says something. I'm guessing we'll find out as we move forward. All right. Well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.